You're listening to Montreal Now on CJAD 800.
That is James MENNIE at the Montreal Gazette. Oh, James.
Oh, David.
What a day. So tell me
between talking about Just for Laughs and then you going on with corporate insolvencies, I had to check my pockets twice before I came on air with you just to make sure I still have my wallet.
I'm telling you, I don't make things up. I work with what the news gives me.
Yeah.
Man,
we retail.
It's bad news everywhere, it seems. But look, there's an election cycle coming up, and the opposition is trying to take advantage of this March break to talk about their budget wish lists.
Well, I mean, their budget wish list. They want Francois Legault to build more houses. They want him to create more daycare centers, more daycare places. They want him to take better care of small businesses. These are all things that Francois Legault in the past has repeatedly promised to do, and I see absolutely no indication that he's going to follow through on those promises next week with the provincial budget. But it does pose an interesting question, David. What exactly can Francois Legault do? What can he commit to, given that he pretty well, and you and I even discussed this over the Christmas holidays when the negotiations were going on. It looked pretty clear. He's basically selling off the farm to buy some labor peace. So he has no margin for maneuver. So what does he do? Does he maintain the status quo? The vice taxes won't work. Most people don't smoke anymore, so that was always a good standby. Will he impose some kind of indirect tax? Because clearly our taxes are not going to go down, and he's going to have to try and hope to find a way between now and the election, which is 2 years away, to actually even ostensibly lower taxes. But my goodness, this is a guy who was not really faced with an embarras de choix, and quite frankly, he needs something of a miracle. He needs something of a gift to give Quebecers next week, if only to try and reinflate his fortunes. He's not doing well. There's nothing to suggest he's turned anything around in the polls, and of course. Every other day, PQ leader Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon seems to give him just a couple of slaps across the jowls just for the fun of it, and that's it. But honestly, at this point in time, when we are seeing perhaps a tentative, semi, perhaps slight recovery. I know they left the crime rate the same as a precaution, but the idea that maybe things might be getting a little bit better. Yes, stay the course, be cautious. But right now, people still want them. In the here and now, life is still tough economically for a lot of Quebecers. And I think even more than tough economically, I think it's the uncertainty that's driving people crazy. It's the uncertainty, people next year, they've got mortgages coming up for renewal. They don't know where that's going to go. They're not entirely sure. I know we talk about, unemployment rates, but a lot of people, jobs are hardly 100% certain anymore.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a real tough road for Francois Legault to hold next week. And honestly, I can't think of a single trick he could pull out of his bag next week that is going to be even, will assuage even his biggest supporters. He can't give you a tax break. What's he going to do? What do you think he's going to do? Because honestly, David, I have no idea.
I don't see it. Because have you noticed also his favorite color? It's a bad week for his favorite color. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, he's had to end Le Panier Bleu. Yeah. He's ending Les Maisons Bleues, which was the super program to build smaller housing for seniors. And now he's canceled Espace Bleu, which was his big program to build cultural spaces across Quebec. So he's canceling stuff left and right. As you're saying, he's got nothing left in the bag, but yet he's going to talk about immigration and language, and it's like dangling keys at a baby and trying to distract us while we're seeing that basically the house is on fire.
Yeah, but this is the problem, David. Nobody's buying it, and it will be very interesting to hear how Alain Girard is going to tap dance his way out of this. And I'm very sorry, talk about, people say, well, people don't remember anything. But this absolutely arrogant, incompetent decision to throw $7 million at an NHL hockey team is going to stick to him like super glue between now and the next election. This is something people will absolutely remember. I'm sure that when we do find out what the punchline is going to be next week with the provincial budget, someone somewhere will compare what's being spent on some particular item versus the $7 million that we sort of tripped over ourselves giving to the Los Angeles Kings.
Well, for example, just for laughs. That's $7 million.
Hey.
Now, and we'll transition to your next topic, but $7 million to the LA Kings, I'm sure that money could have kept JFL afloat at least throughout the summer.
Yeah, well, David, I got to tell you, and we didn't get to it yesterday, but you may have seen, I was a little nervous because whenever something like this happens, it's a knee-jerk reaction in Quebec. Somebody says the word fleuron, right? and the next thing we know, where somebody's getting together saying, let's get some kind of a bailout going here.
Yeah.
You were mentioning, it was so great to hear Joey Elias talking to you earlier in the show. Because, yes, he was disappointed, but he didn't sound like a guy who was panic-stricken because Joey Elias and a lot of the other artists who are involved or were involved with Just for Laughs have got it figured out, that this is not you don't put all your eggs in one 2-week festival. There have been several instances where artists have actually had to go online and tell, ticket holders, don't worry. Eve Cote had a great one. She goes, no, I didn't go bankrupt. Just for laughs. My show is still going on. Don't worry. I hope to have good news for you down the road. But David, you're talking about a bailiff going in and seizing $800 worth of assets, and it was for a judgment for an employee, an archivist. Okay,
I knew him.
And a job for life, David.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you get named to the Senate, you have to leave when you're 75. Okay, a job for life.
Yeah.
I think
he had a contract.
Great.
He had a contract.
Yeah, well, ça c'est bien beau, but and this is what we're finding out about. And it was a very expensive article in that contract, David. But I mean, how much oversight was involved here? And I'm very sorry. It's great to talk about what it brings into Montreal and so on and so forth. It certainly has helped with our local comedy scene, but to a certain extent as well, I found that model, and I must have spent 6 or 7 years covering over the course of the summer, covering the shows over at Just for Laughs. It was all great fun. It was a marvelous time. But then I'm imagining what I experienced and what was on offer back then in those pre-internet days, and how the entire method of conveying that art was utterly different from what it is now, and how the scene has completely changed. And yet I didn't see a corresponding kind of readjustment on the part of Just for Laughs. It all seemed, we're going to have these French galas, English galas, and that's it. We'll be on TV and so on and so forth. And meantime, and I know they have more money than God plus a dollar, but Netflix is a joke. That festival is absolutely huge. You can't compete with that. So why was it that we're only finding out now that this business model for Just for Laughs seems to have been trapped in amber for years and hadn't really changed at all? I mean, this is the big question. And believe me, I'm a huge believer in the Jazz Fest. I love jazz, okay? But I'd be saying the same thing. And you know what? Everyone took a hit during the pandemic. Everyone took a hit during the pandemic. But I think it's a bit disingenuous to try and lay this at the foot of Just for Laughs funeral beer. I think there's more to it than that. I hope we find out what it is, because if only to avoid such mistakes being made in the future. But I have a sneaking suspicion, just from the tone of Joey's voice, just from the tone that I saw in these messages from these other artists, I don't think comedy in Quebec its future has been compromised.
Totally.
I think people will still get by, but that particular infrastructure, this apparently outdated infrastructure that was Just for Laughs, didn't make the cut.
I tend to agree with you. My last stint at Just for Laughs, I left in 2011, and even then, there was a lot of conversations about the transformation of comedy because of technology. And the key now is owning your intellectual property.
Of course.
50 years ago, you could, it's like movie theaters and concert venues and concert promoters. But now you can control your intellectual property without needing those middle persons. And I think that's it. Just for Laughs just wasn't able to adapt. And now you have these juggernauts like Netflix and others that are just taking the entire space because they have the cash.
But on the other hand, David, it has to be said, and I remember, stand-up comedy was being described as, this huge blockbuster, huge industry that basically involved a microphone, a bar stool, and a glass of water, okay? And this is pre-internet. Well, now you can say it involves a microphone, a bar stool, a glass of water, and if you have a GoPro, you can talk to the entire planet.
There it
which
is.
Something that Joey alluded to as well. And that, if nothing else, shows the difference between now with Just for Laughs and the Just for Laughs many people have spent their time remembering this week.
Fair point. Appreciate it, James.
Matt.